I've been a resident, a property owner in Gettysburg for the last 7 years. And your comment about the deer in jumping out on the road kind of brought to mind for me something I've struggled over. And in Gettysburg, trees aren't jumping out in front of cars. And so beyond creating in front of somebody the ease of seeing what the battlefield looked like, you could imagine it through a picture or through a video or a cyclorama. Really, I'm hoping that there's a further reason for the restoration choices that have been made. One of the things I often said when I saw a huge stand of trees coming down by the peace light was, I guarantee you those monuments weren't there when the battle occurred, so why do the trees have to be taken out at the same, instead of just so that someone get a better view? And so my hope, and I hope you can answer this, is that there is a deeper meaning, and if there is, what are the outcomes you're expecting to see as a result? Has it increased tourism? Has it resulted in, no Civil War happening again? Things like that.
I think she's asking for restore or hope in humanity or faith in humanity.
I guess I need to be the first to feel this. Well, to answer your last question first, the response from members of the public for what we have done in terms of landscape rehabilitation has been overwhelmingly positive for increasing a level of understanding by the average visitor, but a majority of visitors, of the actual events of the battle and that took place on a particular piece of ground. And I think that if you looked at a lot of the public comments that come in to Gettysburg National Military Park, you'll find that to be the case. So the answer to that part of your question is I think there is a resounding level of understanding and approval we have found in the principles behind the landscape rehabilitation and the removal of trees. It's also important to note that if you're talking about numbers, in fact, I pulled some of them just for this evening as part of our larger goals. There is 576 acres under the General Management Plan in 1999, 576 acres of non-historic tree removal and replanting of both 115 acres of historic woods and 160 acres of orchards, so that you're not just when we undertook this process, and this gets to the part of your first question, is sort of why we do this. Well, we're a public agency, and we have a legislative mandate that's been given to us by Congress, and in fact, this legislative mandate was given to us by Congress in 1895 when the enabling legislation creating the federal Gettysburg National Military Park was first established. And it is to preserve the topographical landscape and cultural features of the battlefield, and to help the visitor understand the outcome of the battle vis-a-vis those landscape features. So, the removal of non-historic trees goes hand in hand with the planting of historic trees and historic orchards that have been lost over time, just as trees have been gained in not historically accurate areas over time. So, again, I'm not here to debate the merits of it, but I'm just here to give you a sort of an understanding of the philosophy behind it. And that philosophy is when that one visitor makes his or her trip to Gettysburg to understand the battle, the goal of the landscape rehabilitation was to increase to the greatest extent possible through the natural landscape that understanding.
I enjoyed hearing Greg answer that, so thank you for asking that question. And because it is one of the really remarkable challenges, and I think maybe I'm a good one to address it because I started out, wanting to wrap my arms around that tree that I was writing about. That was my thought, was just like you put it beautifully, the trees were not running in front of cars, so why do they need to be taken out? And I learned about how actually, if you began to try to trace the actual history of this landscape, you were opening a whole can of worms, because during that Department of War era, as well as the previous era, a lot of stuff was done to the landscape that you have to factor in, you have to sort out, and so I started out very critical. It's just silly. How could you possibly continue this into the future? Are you going to, keep things from growing? The whole thing. My last 2 times down with classes of students, we stood on top of Devil's Den, looked back towards Rose Farm, and I mean, it takes my breath away, frankly. It took my breath away for a different reason when I was there and they cut all the trees. Now that the trees are gone, and you can look through and see what they call view sheds or view passages. I guess that's the reason why. If I were making the decision, I don't think I would choose to do it, but it is an impressive change at this point. So maybe we're the generation who's going to see the cutting, and the future generations are going to be the ones that just visit it, and it looks the way it did in 1863, and all is swell. So maybe that's why, in my mind, we need to record how we feel, because we're part of the debate and part of the discourse, even if it's going to be okay in the future and maybe an improvement. But I would return to one thing that I said that I would encourage Greg to take back is I would love to see evidence of the change. If you're going to make the change, I would like it to be transparent so that the facility becomes a lesson in preservation as well. And so we can see before and after photographs so that, for the next generation that just goes and takes that view from Devil's Den and it's clear, well, they don't appreciate that it is natural, that things did change and that things had to change back. I think that gives us a more coherent view of what preservation really is, and that we need to continue to have a dialogue, we need to continue to contest, to debate, and that this is just something that's been thought out in our lifetime, and we're probably never going to satisfy everyone. I'm certainly never going to be satisfied.